September 18th, 1947. 9:15 in the morning. A 7-year-old girl named Sarah Williams stood crying outside PS 139 in Harlem. Her grandmother had spent 2 hours that morning braiding her hair, traditional cornrows passed down through 3 generations. The school principal, a white man named Howard Beckman, had just turned her away at the door. Dress code violation, unprofessional hairstyle, not appropriate for a learning environment. By 9:25, Bumpy Johnson knew about it. By 9:35, he was walking through those school doors. By 9:45, the dress code had been rewritten. And Principal Beckman, he never enforced a discriminatory policy again. This is the story of 10 minutes that changed education in Harlem forever. To understand what happened that morning, you need to understand what Harlem was in 1947. The war was over. Black soldiers had come home after fighting for freedom overseas, only to find they still didn't have it at home. Harlem was changing. The old guard, the ones who'd accepted second-class citizenship, they were dying off. A new generation was rising, proud, educated, done with bowing their heads. But the institutions? They hadn't changed at all. Schools in Harlem were still run mostly by white administrators from downtown. They brought their rules, their standards, their idea of what proper looked like. And proper, in their minds, didn't include braids, didn't include cornrows, didn't include anything that looked too black. Sarah Williams was 7 years old, smart kid, loved reading. Her grandmother, Miss Ida Williams, had raised her since her mother died in childbirth. Miss Ida worked 3 jobs, cleaning offices downtown, taking in laundry, doing hair on weekends. She was 62 years old and her hands ached every morning, but she still woke up at 5 a.m. to braid Sarah's hair because it mattered. It was heritage, it was pride, it was love. That morning, September 18th, Miss Ida had done a beautiful job. Neat cornrows, perfectly symmetrical, not a hair out of place. Sarah had looked in the mirror and smiled so wide. She felt like a princess. Miss Ida walked her to school like always, kissed her forehead, watched her climb those steps. Then Principal Beckman stepped out. He was a tall man, thin, wire-rimmed glasses, always wore the same brown suit. He'd been principal at PS 139 for 6 years. Had a reputation, strict, by the book. No exceptions. He looked at Sarah, looked at her hair, and shook his head. "I'm sorry, but she can't enter the building like that." Miss Ida, who'd been turning to leave, stopped. "Excuse me?" "The hairstyle," Beckman said, adjusting his glasses. "It violates our dress code. Students must maintain professional, appropriate hairstyles. This is too elaborate, too distracting." Miss Ida walked back up those steps slowly. Her voice was quiet, but firm. "She spent 2 hours on that hair this morning. It's clean. It's neat. What exactly is inappropriate about it?" Beckman pulled out a small handbook from his jacket pocket. Section 4, Paragraph 2. Extreme hairstyles including but not limited to elaborate braiding patterns are not permitted. It's been policy for 3 years. Sarah started crying. Not loud, just tears running down her face. She didn't understand. She'd done nothing wrong. Her hair was pretty. Grandma said so. Now this man was saying she couldn't go to school? Miss Ida put her hand on Sarah's shoulder. "This is not elaborate. This is how our people have worn their hair for generations. You're telling me my granddaughter can't get an education because of her heritage?" Beckman's face didn't change. "I'm telling you she needs to comply with school policy. If she comes back tomorrow with her hair down or in a simple style, she'll be welcome. Until then, I can't admit her." Other parents were starting to notice now, stopping on the sidewalk, watching. Miss Ida looked at Beckman for a long moment. Then she took Sarah's hand. "Come on, baby, we're going home." They walked 3 blocks. Sarah still crying, Miss Ida's jaw tight, angry tears in her own eyes. And that's when they passed the corner of 135th and Lenox. That's where Bumpy Johnson was having his morning coffee at Red's Diner. Bumpy was 60 years old by then. Still sharp, still powerful, still the man who ran Harlem. But he'd changed some, gotten more political, started caring about the next generation, about building something that lasted. He saw Miss Ida and Sarah through the window. Recognized Miss Ida. She did his sister's hair sometimes. He saw the tears, saw the anger. He put down his coffee, walked outside. "Miss Ida, what happened?" Miss Ida didn't want to bother him. "It's nothing, Mr. Johnson. Just school nonsense." But Sarah, still crying, blurted it out. The principal said my hair is bad, said I can't go to school. Bumpy went very still. He looked at Sarah's braids, looked at Miss Ida. Then he looked back toward the school. What school? PS 139, Miss Ida said. Principal Beckman said her braids violate the dress code. Bumpy nodded slowly. Take Sarah home. Get her some breakfast. I'll handle this. Miss Ida knew who Bumpy Johnson was. Everyone did. But she also knew he'd changed Harlem before, protected it, fought for it. She nodded. Thank you. Bumpy watched them walk away, then turned to the two men who were always with him, Frank and Jimmy, his most trusted associates. We're going to school. 9:35 a.m. Bumpy Johnson walked through the front doors of PS 139. He wasn't dressed fancy. Simple suit, fedora, walking stick he didn't really need but carried anyway. He moved like a man who owned every room he entered. The secretary at the front desk looked up. Can I help you? I'm here to see Principal Beckman. Do you have an appointment? No. But he'll see me. Tell him Bumpy Johnson is here about Sarah Williams. The secretary's face went pale. Everyone in Harlem knew that name. She picked up the phone with a shaking hand. Mr. Beckman? There's a Mr. Johnson here to see you. About a student. He says it's important. There was a pause. Then she hung up. He'll be right out. Beckman came out of his office 30 seconds later. He'd heard the name Bumpy Johnson, knew the reputation. But he was also a man who believed in rules, in authority, in the system. Mr. Johnson, I'm not sure what this is about, but if you don't have a student enrolled here, I'm afraid I can't discuss school matters with you. Bumpy smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. Sarah Williams, 7 years old. You turned her away this morning because of her hair. Beckman straightened his shoulders. That's a private school matter. We have policies that all students must follow. I don't make exceptions. Bumpy took a step closer. His voice stayed calm, almost friendly. See, that's where you're confused. You think this is about policy. It's not. It's about respect. And you just disrespected that little girl, her grandmother, and every black family in this neighborhood. Beckman's face flushed. Now see here, I don't appreciate being threatened in my own school. Bumpy held up his hand. Nobody's threatening you. I'm educating you. There's a difference. Let's go to your office. We need to talk about this dress code. Beckman wanted to refuse, wanted to call the police. But something in Bumpy's eyes, that calm certainty, made him hesitate. Fine. 5 minutes. They walked into Beckman's office. Frank and Jimmy stayed outside, standing by the door. Inside, Bumpy sat down without being invited. Beckman stayed standing behind his desk, trying to maintain some authority. Show me this dress code. Beckman pulled out the handbook, opened it to the page, slid it across the desk. Bumpy read it slowly. Extreme hairstyles, including but not limited to elaborate braiding patterns, are not permitted. He looked up. Who wrote this? It was implemented by the district 3 years ago. I didn't write it, I just enforce it. Bumpy leaned back in his chair. You know what I see when I read this? I see someone who's afraid. Afraid of black children looking too black. Afraid of culture, of heritage, of anything that reminds them that we're not trying to be white. We're proud of who we are. Beckman shook his head. It's not about race. It's about maintaining standards. Professionalism. Professionalism. Bumpy repeated the word like it tasted bad. A 7-year-old girl needs to be professional? Her grandmother spent 2 hours braiding her hair with love and tradition, and you call that unprofessional? Beckman crossed his arms. The policy applies to all students equally. Bumpy laughed, but there was no humor in it. Equally. You got white girls in this school with braids? With elaborate hairstyles? I bet you do. I bet you never turned them away. That's different, Beckman started. No, Bumpy cut him off. It's exactly the same, except when they do it, it's cute. When we do it, it's a violation. That's not equality. That's racism with a policy number attached. The room went quiet. Beckman's face was red now. Mr. Johnson, I don't have to listen to this. You're not a parent. You're not a teacher. You have no authority here. Bumpy stood up slowly. You're right. I'm not a parent. I'm not a teacher. But I am the man who makes sure this neighborhood runs smooth. I'm the man who makes sure black businesses don't get shut down by dirty inspectors. I'm the man who makes sure cops don't beat our kids in the street. And I'm the man who's telling you right now, this policy ends today. Beckman tried to stand firm. I can't just change district policy because you demand it. Bumpy walked to the window, looked out at the playground. Yes, you can. You're the principal. You have discretion. You can interpret policy. You can choose not to enforce discriminatory rules. Or you can keep enforcing them, and I'll make sure every parent in Harlem knows that PS 139 doesn't want their children. That's a threat. That's a promise. Bumpy turned back to face him. You think this school runs without this community? You think you'll have students if every family pulls their kids out? You think the district will keep you as principal of an empty building? Beckman sat down heavily. What do you want? I want you to rewrite Section 4, Paragraph 2, right now. I want it to say that all hairstyles are permitted as long as they're clean and well-maintained. I want you to send a memo to every teacher in this building by lunch. And I want you to personally apologize to Sarah Williams and her grandmother. Beckman stared at him. And if I refuse? Bumpy leaned forward, both hands on the desk. Then tomorrow morning, there will be 200 parents outside this school with signs. There will be reporters. There will be community leaders. And there will be questions about why a white principal is enforcing rules that only seem to affect black children. How do you think that looks in 1947, after we just fought a war against fascism? The silence stretched. Beckman knew he was beaten. He'd underestimated who he was dealing with. This wasn't just a gangster. This was a man who understood power, politics, and pressure. Fine, I'll revise the policy. Bumpy didn't move. Now. I'll wait. Beckman pulled out a typewriter, rolled in a fresh sheet of paper. His hands shook slightly as he typed. Bumpy watched every word. When it was done, Beckman pulled it out, handed it over. Bumpy read it carefully. Section 4, Paragraph 2, revised. All hairstyles are permitted provided they are clean, well-maintained, and do not pose a safety hazard. Cultural and traditional hairstyles are explicitly protected under this policy. Bumpy nodded. Good. Now the memo. Beckman typed another page. To all faculty and staff. Effective immediately, the dress code has been revised. Please see attached updated policy. All students are to be admitted regardless of hairstyle, provided basic hygiene and safety standards are met. Any questions should be directed to my office. Bumpy took both pages. I'll hold on to these. You make copies for your staff. And the apology? When should Miss Ida expect you? Beckman swallowed hard. I'll visit this afternoon. After school. Bumpy smiled, and this time it was almost genuine. Good. You're learning. He walked to the door, then paused. One more thing. If I ever hear about you or any teacher in this building discriminating against a child for their hair, their skin, their culture, anything, I won't come back for a conversation. We clear? Beckman nodded. We're clear. Bumpy walked out. Frank and Jimmy fell in step beside him. The whole visit had taken exactly 10 minutes. By the time they reached the street, word was already spreading. Bumpy Johnson just went into PS 139. Bumpy Johnson changed the dress code. Bumpy Johnson stood up for Sarah Williams. That afternoon, Principal Beckman showed up at Miss Ida's apartment, hat in hand. He apologized, said Sarah was welcome back tomorrow, said her hair was beautiful. Miss Ida accepted the apology with grace, but she didn't forget. The next morning, Sarah walked into PS 139 with her braids still perfect. Other girls noticed. Within a week, half the girls in her class were wearing braids. Within a month, it spread to other schools. Principals who'd been enforcing similar policies quietly dropped them. Nobody wanted a visit from Bumpy Johnson. Years later, in the 1960s, when the civil rights movement was fighting against discrimination in schools, against policies that targeted black students for their appearance, activists would point back to PS 139 in Harlem, point to September 18, 1947, point to the day one man walked into a school and changed everything in 10 minutes. Sarah Williams grew up, became a teacher herself, taught at PS 139 actually. She wore her hair in braids every single day. And when she told her students the story of why they were allowed to wear their hair however they wanted, she always ended it the same way. Respect isn't given, it's demanded. And sometimes it takes someone brave enough to walk through the door and demand it for you. Bumpy Johnson never talked about it publicly, didn't brag, didn't seek credit. To him, it was simple. A child was being denied education because of her heritage. That was unacceptable. So he fixed it. That's what power was for. Not just controlling territory or making money, but protecting the people who couldn't protect themselves. The dress code policy he forced Beckman to write? It stayed in place for decades. Even after Bumpy died in 1968, Even after the neighborhood changed, that policy remained. Cultural and traditional hairstyles are explicitly protected. Those words, typed on a typewriter by a scared principal while Bumpy Johnson watched, became the foundation for anti-discrimination policies in schools across New York. And it all started because a 7-year-old girl wore braids to school, and the wrong man heard about it. Or maybe the right man. Depends on how you look at it. If this story moved you, hit that subscribe button. We're telling the Bumpy Johnson stories that show the man behind the legend. The moments where power met principle. The times when being feared meant you could protect the fearless. Drop a like if you think every community needs someone willing to walk through that door. And in the comments, tell me, what would you have done if you were Principal Beckman? Would you have stood your ground or changed the policy? More legendary stories coming tomorrow. Don't miss it.